Hail on KTRS.
It's 9:10. Am I on? 9:10, Big 550, KTRS. Welcome in the audience watching KPLR 11.2. He used to be the Speaker Pro Tem of the House of Representatives down in Jefferson City. Carl Bearden is now the Executive Director of United for Missouri. Carl, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, McGraw.
So we got two ballot initiatives. One is a constitutional amendment, and the other one is just a regular law, right?
Right. It's a proposition.
And we're sort of going through this week, going through each one of these and getting someone on to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And you were quoted as saying that Amendment 3 is a very bad idea. Amendment 3 is a constitutional amendment. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So it's a constitutional amendment that is funded by the tobacco companies that would increase the tobacco tax for early childhood education. Now, Carl Bearden, I know you well enough. That sounds like a really good idea.
There are some very good sounding things in Amendment 3, early childhood education, and there's a discussion about how good of a job early childhood education does and how long it lasts. School choice, there are a lot of good things in Amendment 3, but when you peel back the layers and you see that what Big Tobacco is trying to do is not only raise cigarette taxes 60 cents, but they're trying to put another 67-cent increase on their competitors so that they gain back a huge market share.
I do find it interesting that Big Tobacco is funding a tobacco tax.
Yes. And because they get something, you need to know two things. First, the 60 cents that's in Amendment 3, that's only on cigarettes. It's not on other tobacco products, which they make a lot of money on.
Right.
The 67 cents is only on their competitors, what is known as small tobacco. Now, small tobacco are still multi-million-dollar companies, but they're not hundreds of million-dollar companies like Big Tobacco.
So they want to put 60 cents on their own product and 67 cents on their competitors' products?
67 cents plus the 60 cents. So it's about a 750% increase.
On their competitors?
On their competitors. Wouldn't you like to do something like that? Yeah.
And they want to make this a constitutional amendment.
Correct. So a constitutional amendment means that in order to change anything in there, you have to have another vote of the people. The legislature can't fix any problems that may be in there.
Let's talk about the money and where the money goes. People say that it is going to be safely and securely spent on early childhood education.
Right. Well, the lockbox that they talk about has already been picked. It starts out with a $36.2 million administrative fund that the legislature can increase every year. So you can grow that $36 million if you want to the next year to $100 million. There's no limitation on that. So the lockbox really doesn't exist. And so the early childhood education piece of that, if you look at early childhood education and what it really takes, the two studies that show that early childhood education provides some significant improvements. Where with 100 kids, they spend over $30,000 per kid to get it there. And so there's a lot of question about the effectiveness of early childhood education.
Some people, the amount of people who are against Amendment 3, you've got the Missouri Farmers Association,
right.
You've got the American Lung Association, the American Cancer Society. I mean, it's a pretty interesting coalition of people who are against Amendment 3.
Pro-life. I mean, you have fiscal organizations like mine and Missouri Freedom, but then you also have Missouri Budget Project, which is left-leaning,
right.
big spending together.
So it's really shocking how many people who can't agree on what day of the week it is all agree that this is a bad amendment.
Right, and in today's environment, that says a lot, I think. Because we were talking earlier about all the back and forth, and when you get on the same page with all those other people, that really says something. I think that's why it's polling so low.
Did you really say this is one of the most deceitful things you've ever seen?
It is, because first off, they say it's for the children, and that's your first clue that it's bad. I used to always get aggravated on the House floor because I'd get up and we'd talk about children, and I'd say, Mr. Speaker, there's more child abuse that takes place on the floor of the House of Representatives than any other place because we use them as hostages for everything. And that's exactly what's happening here. So what they want you to believe, what you see on the commercials, are about all the kids, and that's great. And again, there are some good things mentioned in there. But what they don't tell you is all the smoke and mirrors behind it.
Okay, now this is Amendment 3. The other one is just the law. What's that? That's Proposition
A. So
okay.
Proposition A puts a 23-cent increase on cigarettes and a 5% increase, I think it's 5%, on all other tobacco products.
Okay, and that money is going to go to the roads.
Correct.
What do you think of that one?
Well, I think that's a bad idea as far as going to roads, because once you disassociate the revenue source from the actual use, sometimes in the future that's going to be separated. And so I think we have some real transportation needs. I think there's some things MoDOT needs to do. We have audits that say there are a lot of things they need to do with the money they already have. So I think it's a bad thing, and really that's actually a counter to Amendment 3. The convenience store folks kind of put Proposition A on there. And if you read it very closely, there's a poison pill in it.
What's the poison pill?
Poison pill says that if there's ever a local tax increase on tobacco or a statewide tax increase proposed on tobacco, that Proposition A goes away.
Oh, wow, it's interesting. So it's only in effect until something better comes along.
Correct, because Missouri does have the lowest taxing on tobacco in the country.
Right.
But we actually, good or bad, benefit economically from that, from all the people from Illinois who come over here to not only buy the cigarettes, they buy gas, which is a lower rate and lower tax,
right,
but all around the state and the border areas.
But the argument is that tobacco users probably are a bigger drain on the healthcare system.
And that was the whole premise of the Master Settlement Agreement, which is really what this big tobacco thing is about,
right,
is that they were supposed to reimburse states back for the effects of their products. And so that's the real question back and forth here.
All right, so Amendment 3, why is take us into the minds of big tobacco. Why do they want Amendment 3 to pass? So
they want Amendment 3 to pass because they will put about a 750% tax increase on their competitors. They will get big tobacco will pay about half of that. They'll get about a 350% increase. So what they want to do, though, is to gain back market share that the small tobacco guys have been gaining. Small tobacco under the Master Settlement Agreement, who they were not part of. They didn't negotiate it, but they're participants. They're called NPMs, non-participating manufacturers. They pay into an escrow fund. But the way that the big tobacco lawyers wrote it, little tobacco, small tobacco, can actually reclaim some of that escrow fund. Not all of it, but some of it. And so what big tobacco wants them to do is leave that money in there for 25 years, which means they have to raise their prices. And if they raise their prices, that puts big tobacco back into competition with them. And the projections are big tobacco's market share will increase by 300 to 500 million if this passes.
And according to the Post Dispatch, it looks like both of them are losing, at least somewhat.
Right.
Is that the way you see it?
So the last I heard that Amendment 3 was minus 13, and that Proposition A, they're not even campaigning. You haven't seen any commercials for Prop A.
Right.
You can't go to the convenience stores and say, vote yes for Prop A, because they really don't want it to pass. But it's an alternative for them because they believe, the convenience stores who put it on, believe that still remains competitive on the borders.
Would you like to see our cigarette taxes increased?
Not just willy-nilly. I think there needs to be a plan. I think Prop A is bad because it gives it transportation. It's not an associated deal.
Right.
I think there's room for our tobacco taxes to increase. I'm not a tax proponent. I don't think you tax something just because you can.
Right.
And so I think that there's a lot of things that have to be considered. And right now we don't have a plan. Let's just throw the tax out and do it.
Would you like to see taxes increased on cigarettes to go towards health-related or health care or Medicare or Medicaid
I
issues?
think the whole thing is we need to relook our whole tax policy. And I think, under the new governor, that we have a chance to do that, whether it's Koster, whether it's Greitens, that we should take a look at our whole tax policy and make that part of the whole plan. What we've been doing is piecemealing it. And so if we raise cigarette taxes, that's just a piecemeal approach to what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. You don't like the fact that the cigarette tax would go to the roads. You'd rather have roads go to roads or gasoline go to roads because there's a one-to-one connection.
Correct. The more tied to the function, the more tied the resource is to the function, the more likely that it will be sustained.
Right. But if you raise cigarette taxes and put it towards health care or health-related issues, you raise the tax means less people will smoke, and if you do smoke, you're more of a drain on the health care services, so you're helping to fund your own addiction.
Yeah, so we've voted on cigarette taxes already 3 times in the last 10 or 12 years. Every time I believe it's been a constitutional amendment. One of the times was to do exactly what you're saying, is that it would go to health care, and it still failed.
Right, yeah. Yeah, for some reason, we just don't like to raise cigarette taxes.
We don't like to raise taxes at all. There's been no tax increase on a statewide basis passed for a very, very long time.
Yeah. Carl Bearden with us, founder, executive director of United for a Missouri. You are writing about Amendment 3. Can people find out more about what your brilliant deductions on all this?
Yes, they can. They can go to unitedformissouri.org, and they'll be able to call it up, and we have write-ups on all of the amendments that are on the ballot.
I yield the balance of my time back to the Speaker Pro Tem, Carl Bearden, founder and executive director of United for a Missouri. You're always welcome here, sir. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
9:30 here, Big 550.